this one's different. Michael Allosso didn't just study performance, he lives it. In this episode, he shows us how the world of drama and the world of business aren't all that different. If you want to show up as you on your best day, lean in. This one's for you.
So we're doing a play, and today is the first rehearsal of play. You get your script and it says, Paul walks across the stage drunk, approaching Michael. And so you come up and go, Michael, how are you? I go, ugh, Paul, what are you doing? That's so fake. Everybody wants to come back because of the authenticity, the realness of it. And I think that's always what attracted me.
How we do anything is how we do everything.
At theater, when you feel good about yourself, you make art. I always knew I had a singular song that I wanted to sing. It's just having the strength to sing that song. Theater is magical. When you attend a play that's excellent, you leave the theater and your life has changed. I'm all about enriching lives. I believe when you heighten your stakes, magic happens because people are very interested and in love with people who heighten their stakes. It's very charismatic, and people are smarter than you give them credit for. When you heighten the stakes, magic happens. It takes the same amount of energy to bring your best authentic self. It's not an energy difference.
Today, we're going to find out how mastering presence and performance, both on stage and off, can completely transform the way people respond to you, both in business and in life. Today's guest is Michael Allosso. He's a master communications expert, award-winning speaker and self-awareness specialist with a unique background in theatre, film and leadership coaching. Over 20 years of experience coaching CEOs, executives and their teams, Michael has helped business leaders master presence, communication and authenticity. His You on Your Best Day program has transformed thousands of professionals by teaching them how to command attention, engage audiences and elevate their impact. He's a former theatre director and actor. I want to say that in my best British accent. Michael's ability to translate performance techniques into business communication has earned him numerous accolades, including multiple Speaker of the Year awards from Vistage International and TEC Canada. Michael, that is a very impressive bio. It's a pleasure to have you along for the show today. How are you?
Well, thank you, Paul, for the best British accent, too. That's what I would expect. Do you know whose birthday it is today? It's Queen Elizabeth I's 497th birthday, and she looks great for her age. I mean, so with that weighty holiday that we're celebrating, I feel so honored that I'm your guest. It's great to be with you. I miss being in the UK. If I'm gone for a month, I feel like, I need to go back. And speaking with you, I feel like I'm back.
It's nice to hear. It's nice to hear because I think sometimes that divide across the water is more than we deserve at times. There's a lot of, certainly East Coast America, as we were discussing before the show, New England. A lot of my friends in my local area would really appreciate the connections that we have across the pond to you guys. There's a lot of closeness there.
Well, I'm waving to you right now. I'm looking at the pond right outside my window. And so I'm waving. I hope you can see me.
It's a beautiful pond. It's a beautiful pond. Michael, I think you're the first person that we've had that started out with a background in theatre, particularly. So we've had, it's amazing how many people get into marketing who come from a film background, certainly. And I know that theatre, if anything, is film but exaggerated. It's more, there has to be more of a connection in the moment. So if you would, I'd like to start back there in how you got involved in theatre in the first place. Is it always something that you wanted to do?
I love what you said, Paul. Film, but exaggerated or more. In a way, it is more authentic. You say exaggerated. The incongruity of that statement is that it's more real. Exaggeration we generally think of as fake. The theater has to be real. You can't retake it. It is in the moment. There's an interaction with a live audience. So back in the day, rarely could an actor go back and forth between theater and film. Today, we see it happening quite frequently because actors are stronger and they're studying more. But you notice many film actors are eager to go back and do theater. Glenda Jackson, who's one of the most successful film actors, two-time Academy Award winner, outstanding British film actress, came back and did Broadway, last year. Everybody wants to come back because of the authenticity, the realness of it. And I think that's always what attracted me.
Special shout out in today's episode for our charity partners, ADHD Liberty, led by Sarah Templeton, who are part of the fight to prevent the school to prison pipeline for ADHD and neurodiverse individuals. If you'd like to find out more, you can visit them. The show links are in the notes below, and I would encourage you to go along and have a look and educate yourself on their fight. It's an incredibly important cause, and we're super proud to have them as charity partners for the MarketPulse Pros and Pioneers podcast. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your episode.
Think about who I am, Paul. My parents were born in the US, but their parents were all born in Europe. And when they came to the US in those days, you were embarrassed to be from Europe. And what you did was you repressed any of your European heritage. So it was all about assimilation. It's very different now. My parents, their parents had to assimilate. Both my parents were born here, but their older siblings were not. And so it was about learning a language, assimilating. So my parents grew up in households of low self-esteem. Basically, people who did not feel they were worthy and worked hard because, there were nasty names. The U.S. has its history of intolerance. Everyone thinks what we're doing now is new. It's historical. And so I know my grandparents were such low self-esteem, hardworking people. And neither of my parents graduated from the 10th grade. So my dad tells a story. He started 10th grade, school finished the first day, and he went out and put on his football uniform to do football practice. And his dad appeared and he said, "Take that off. What are you doing? You have to come back and work on the farm." And he grabbed my dad by the ear, took him to the farm, and my dad never went back to school. So flash forward to they have 3 sons, and all they care about is that dream of educating their 3 sons. Now, I'm in the middle. I know that will shock you because I'm so normal that you would think, how could I be a middle child? I'm a classic middle child. And both my brothers are huge jocks, multi-talented athletes, multi-sports. And I was the kind of academic, artsy guy in the middle. Now, think about like if you grew up in Brighton. I grew up in a town called Arlington, Massachusetts, suburb of Boston, where everybody was either Irish or Italian. There were no Black people, no Jewish people. And if you didn't do sports and you were a boy, you were called pretty bad names. And so there I am, little skinny me. And everyone says, "Oh, you're going to play football like your brother Joe?" No, I really want to study and do student council and do theater. But I didn't have the confidence to do theater until my senior year of high school. I always knew I was attracted to acting, but I just wasn't confident enough to do it. And do you know what finally made me confident? And this is the sad part of this, is because I had a hot girlfriend senior year. So finally, I had the confidence to do theater. How sad is that? And so that's when the moment began where I finally did this thing that I kept inside because I was afraid I'd be called names. And probably in that moment, either consciously or subconsciously, I said, I'm going to make sure other kids never feel this way and they see the power of theater. So the first 10 years of my career, I was a high school drama teacher. And I think the drive was I wanted to open up those kids earlier than I was opened up for that incredible opportunity for them to express themselves, to do that through theater. Because think about what theater does educationally, Paul. You can cast everybody. If you choose a play, and not charity casting, you choose a play, you need the macho dude and you need the boy who's gay who doesn't know he's gay yet. You need the heavy girl who's struggling with her weight, and you need Miss Pretty Cheerleader Girl. You need them all in order to make the play, and you cast them in roles where they shine, where they're brilliant, and they learn to love and respect each other, because you can't make a play if only one person's good. It's like sports in so many ways, that you have to work together as that team. So that was the magic for me, bringing those kids out. And then what I was discovering was, not only was I doing great things for kids and making them feel good about themselves, but I was making great art. Our theater, when you feel good about yourself, you make art. And so our plays, I'm as proud of anything I directed with high school kids as things I directed with professional actors in my career. Stunning pieces where these kids were brilliant. And so that was, I became selfish at the end of 10 years, if you will. And I said, am I going to be happy when I'm 80 years old and the parents are making testimonials about how I changed their kids' lives and gave me a gold watch? Is that going to give me the fulfillment that I need? And so that's when I made the decision to go get my Master's of Fine Arts in directing, to immerse myself in the professional theater. That's the journey that started. So it was always in there. Probably my mother said that I was dancing as a little kid, that I'd go out in the street and throw my shoes off and run through ponds. And I'm sure I didn't see Singing in the Rain with Gene Kelly when I was 4 years old doing that. But somehow I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I was never going to march the same drummer as my older brother or my dad, the macho fireman. I always knew I had a singular song that I wanted to sing. It's just having the strength to sing that song.
I think when you've got that much creative energy sat within you, it always finds a way to leak out in the end. You can compress it and hide it and control it for so long, but I think it always finds a way out. But I think that what you said about, helping young people to find their way to let it out at an earlier age and make it more of an accepted path for kids to go without that kind of negative aspect, that negative. And I completely see where you're coming from with that, because even here in the UK, I can see where that is the same. We maybe not to use the same words we had at the beginning. Maybe not as exaggerated. Maybe a little bit more acceptable, but not quite. If that makes sense. And the drama kids were always, either one end of the spectrum or the other, right? It was always the kids that just wanted attention, or the kids that really needed to get a bit more attention but didn't quite dare and kind of sat there very quiet. And I think it takes a courageous person to help kind of change young people's perception, I think is the word I'm looking for. The young people's perception of that. And I think you're absolutely right. It takes all sorts. You need all the angles to do that.
Courageous on both ends, right, Paul? Because they were courageous to do it, and then they made me better. Think about the skills they were giving me. Because when you direct high school kids, Paul, you can't miss a beat. So if they're going to say to you, Mr. Allosso, in scene 3, when I handed Paul the javelin, yesterday I handed him the javelin this way. Today I did it this way. Which did you think worked better? And if you're not paying attention, you're not honoring them the way you should. So they taught me I need to be on my toes. And that's where I developed my real critical faculty, because that's my secret sauce. To be able to look at something and to tell you in great specifics what works and what doesn't work for it and how people are receiving it. They taught me how to use those skills. They forced me to use those skills. They demanded that I use those skills that I had developed by sitting as a little introverted kid, watching my brother and watching my dad in a house full of all this swagger, being quiet. I developed observation skills. And then I applied that to the kids. And so it was a mutual admiration society for sure.
So then how do you find that transition from working with children and young people through to the more professional productions that you worked on in later years?
Yeah, it was, as I said, vanity. It was, man, I'm doing great stuff. I want to do this at a higher level. And I also knew that I could I'm a professional improviser. So I also knew there's an improv company in Boston that when I was teaching in high school, we had as a guest performer in our school. So these 4 hot actors came and did improv for the kids. And my eyes were bulging as I watched them because the little Michael voice inside said, I can do this. I can definitely do this. So there was kind of a collision. You know how, whether you believe in God or the cosmos, sometimes things happen and you think there must be a reason. So my fireman dad, who is so strong, indomitable dad, never sick, never took a day off, Paul, from the fire station, showed up every day. And was really proud of that. He was diagnosed with terminal cancer at the same time that my ideal marriage, the woman I married, the woman I lost my virginity with, the woman I went to the senior prom with, that our marriage fizzled pretty much simultaneously with my dad being diagnosed with cancer, terminal cancer. And so this guy who thought he was going to have 2.6 children and live happily ever after teaching drama, suddenly everything got challenged. And so I felt sorry for myself for about 5 minutes. And my friend Cheryl called me up one day and said, guess what? You know that improv company that came to your school? They want a replacement cast. They're casting 6 new actors. Pick up, get your energy going. I'm coming to get you, and we're going to this audition. So, Paul, this was an amazing audition. There were hundreds of actors, all thinking they were funny, who were put up on stage and were told, do a blues song about javelins. Do a country and Western song about the UK. Go. And you had no preparation time. And so the hundreds of people did this. And then they narrowed it down to 26 people to come in and do a lengthy audition. I got there and they put us through a day of ropes. At the end of the day, they hired 10 people for a week because they said, this audition's not over. We're going to pay you a week's salary and you're going to do improv for a week and we're going to see who the 6 people are. And 4 of you are going to go home and 6 of you are going to stay. I mean, this was long before these reality TV shows. I was in the reality TV show. And I'm sure you know this about me, Paul. I'm deeply competitive. And so there was no way, now that I had made it to this point, that I was going to be one of those 4 people. And so that competitive thing drove me. And I got cast as one of these 6 new professional improvisers for this company where you understand what professional improv is. You stand on stage, an audience comes in and you say, what's something you like to do in your spare time? And someone says, ski in the Alps. And suddenly you're doing a scene or a song about skiing in the Alps immediately. You have a tiny little huddle time and away you go. That was a major transition for me. That told me that I had these professional skills. And that was as I was rounding, I think I was past the midpoint of my teaching career. So I did the professional improv and taught at the same time, which was huge. It was hard to balance those two. And so that was a huge catalyst. And so that with the pride and looking at these beautiful plays. And of course, I'm competitive. We entered festivals. We didn't just do them for ourselves. And we won festivals. And that's it. You know, you have those kids suddenly who were socially awkward. Suddenly they're going to drama festivals and winning. Transformational. I'm saying, if I can do that for kids, what can I do for adults so I can change the world so that more people are seeing these pieces of theater and are upping their joy, upping their commitment to a moment. Theater is magical. When you attend a play that's excellent, you leave the theater and your life has changed. I'm all about enriching lives. So I think that was the sort of the recipe for what this move was for that. Because remember, chapter 1, high school drama teacher, chapter 2, Mr. Show Business. And I know where you're going. Chapter 3, like away we go. But you see how the first 2 steps made sense for who I was?
Absolutely. And it's clear that from a young age, you knew what your why was. Your why that we talk about this all the time now. Your why, and it's a big part of this season, right? Like discovering what it is that makes you unique in your space. And it's rare to meet somebody, to be fair, that kind of, I guess, even if somebody had articulated it to you and said, why do you do what you do? You probably, at least at the early part of that, wouldn't have known why you do what you do, just that you enjoy it. It was a passion, and
Yes.
you were working on your passion. But it's clear now that, throughout that entire thing, that the one theme that kept you going was that the impact that you were having on other people's lives and your ability to transform what they were experiencing, what they were doing, how they were perceiving it through your arts, through the arts that you were helping other people with. And I think that's a beautiful gift to be able to give to people. You're right. Phase 3 is kind of where I'm most curious, because that feels like a career. All of what you've discussed feels like a lifelong career. At what point did you decide that you then wanted to help business owners? Like, how did you transition from a successful director, actor, all these award-winning productions? I can imagine you've had an amazing experience. You met some fantastic actors and performers. Why did you transition from that to business leaders?
I believe when you are really excellent at what you do and you heighten the stakes, like you, one of the things I respect about you is that this podcast, as we prepared for it, was critically important to you. I didn't feel like you had anyone else in your life but me, that this was all about you and me creating this podcast and making it excellent so that your community would be lifted and enriched. So that's, in theater, we call that heightening the stakes. So if I'm coaching you and Leo in a scene, a father-son scene in a play, and I think you're sort of into it, I'll say, hey, Paul, come on, heighten your stakes. I believe when you heighten your stakes, magic happens, because people are very interested and in love with people who heighten their stakes. It's very charismatic, and people are smarter than you give them credit for. They do all the heavy lifting for you. I didn't decide, oh, I'm going to be a business coach. Others did. So think about it. High school drama teacher. You can imagine how committed and passionate I was. That first marriage fell apart probably partially because of my complete commitment to those high school kids. My rehearsal room door was always open, and parents would stray in and watch rehearsals. Paul, one of those parents turned out to be the corporate shrink of a major utility company in the UK and in New England. And I don't know how many years or months this was afterwards. He called me and he said, Michael, I watched how you coached my daughter Sabrina and her peers. Do you think you could translate those skills to coaching a CEO? Because I'm the corporate shrink of this utility company and I'm running out of things to do with my CEO. Do you think you could translate those skills to that? You know me well enough, Paul. I'm not big on the no word. That's why I'm doing this podcast with you. So I said, oh yeah, sure, I can do that. Well, when I hung up with him, I went and looked up CEO in the dictionary. Does your viewership know what a dictionary is? Yeah, so I didn't even know what a CEO was. What's a CEO? They brought me in, Paul. HR interviewed me for 3 hours on straight back chairs like this. It was like a grilling. I thought I was going to prison. At the end of the 3 hours, they not only gave me the CEO to coach, but the 9 VPs in line to be the next, in UK, you call them more managing directors, I guess, in line to be the next big shot, because the CEO had already announced that he was leaving. So yes, they not only gave me the CEO to coach, but these other 9 people. So all of a sudden, Mr. Show Business is coaching these 10 hotshots and telling them what to do. I had lots of imposter syndrome back then, but I kept plucking through and doing the things, coaching them the same way I'd coached actors. One of them turned out to be in this leadership group, and he said, I need to hire you to come to observe me in this leadership. So I went with my trusty legal pad that I always have. And I took notes through the whole meeting. They were about to process a confidential issue. The chair of the group dismissed me. And as I was walking out the door, he said, "Hey, you took a lot of notes. Read those notes." And I said, "Oh, well, my notes for my client are confidential." He said, "Bull, you were taking notes about everybody." So this was in Boston. And he said, "Read them, spill them." So I read all my notes. Paul, it was either that night or the next day, he called me and he said, "I want you to be a speaker." He said, "I'm going to hire you for this was fall of 2003. He said, January 2004, you're going to lead off the year speaking to my 2 groups. I'm going to send you the paperwork. This was part of Vistage International that you talked about in my intro. It's in the UK, and there are so many splinter groups. But basically, it's an organization that's worldwide that gets leaders of companies to sit in a room. You have, 14 to 20 disparate groups, and they meet monthly. And I started on the speaker circuit of that January 2004 because of the goodness of this chair. He saw it in me. And I created You on Your Best Day overnight, my 35 secret weapons to help you be you on your best day overnight. When I say created overnight, I put it pen to paper overnight. This was something I was living my whole life. I simply translated what I had done in my career with kids, my career with theater. So you see how coaching executives is a collision of the educational theater world and the professional theater world. So those same skills that I had been working on in both of those, both for myself and in transferring those skills to others, was what I used for executives. And the rest is history. I did his first 2 groups. He went on this thing called ChairNet where he gossiped about me. Someone else picked me up. And before long, that's how I got to the UK so often. Hallelujah. It was because of that organization. And then other people met me and brought me in for other things. And here I am, all because of a high school drama rehearsal. So Paul, here's the thing. Why did I get to where I am? Because I don't believe in the 4-letter word just. I never said, it's just a rehearsal. They're just high school kids. It's a rehearsal. They're high school kids. I'm not just doing a podcast this morning. I'm doing a podcast with Paul. When you heighten the stakes, magic happens.
This is one of my favorite conversations. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. A lot of people talk about personal brand these days, right? Personal brands become something a lot of people roll their eyes at. I don't want to be a thought leader. I don't want to be an influencer. I don't want to have a personal brand. And I think what you're proving to all of us is that we have a personal brand, whether we like it or not. And a personal brand is not something that you just have on LinkedIn. It's not something that you just have on any social media platform. It's how people perceive you when you're not in the room. It's how people you work with, your family, your friends, it's how you turn up. And I think you've very succinctly drawn a line under why that's important for all of us, in that how we do anything is how we do everything. And that's one of the core things I've always raised my kids on, right? You're going to go and train for football practice, you train, but train as if you're in a game. Don't train like you're here to pass some time for half an hour and it's fun. Train like you're in a game, because when the game comes, you don't want to make those mistakes. You want to make them now, but you won't make those mistakes now if you don't train hard. I'm making them apply that to lots and lots of things. So I love your philosophy around all of that. Talk us a little bit through You on Your Best Day, if you would. Like, what are the...
Sure.
What's
but
the
I'm
core
still
to
enjoying
that?
how we do anything is how we do everything. I love that.
I can't claim ownership for that. I heard that somewhere else as well.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, and I'll be glad to talk about You on Your Best Day. The people who are nervous about being thought leaders, maybe translate it to action leader, because You on Your Best Day, what's real important to us as directors, as actors, is the word objective as a noun, not as an adjective. So most of my coaching starts with, what's your objective? So I did that with you this morning. I said, what's the objective of this podcast? So we define objective as, what do you want the audience to leave and do at the end of the event? Not think, not feel, but do. What do you want people to do? And so once I know the objective, then I'm able to serve you and to serve the podcast. So in theater, we have another thing. So objective is your desired result. By the end of the meeting, we have this other thing called super objective. So super objective is what the objective sits under. It's what we want on our tombstone. So mine is secret weapon number 35 of the 35, that every single human being I meet, whether it's you during this podcast, whether it's the cab driver, whether it's my family member, they're going to be better after meeting me. And so that's what carries me through a day. And that's the philosophy behind you on your best day. The most important word is authenticity. And what most people struggle with is they want to challenge me. Well, if you're excellent all the time, that can't be authentic. You just have to. So I say, well, what those people do is they play the obstacle instead of playing the objective. Do you understand that distinction, Paul? So people under the guise of authenticity say, well, my back hurts today. So how is it authentic for me? Well, okay, Mr. Krabby, your back may hurt. That's the obstacle. What's your objective? What's your authentic objective? My objective is for my team to produce today. They got to produce. Well, can we think about the tactics you need to create authentically to get your people to produce? And whining about your back is certainly not one of them. It's all you have to do is go to a restaurant once and have the server come to you and say, oh, I'm so tired. You're my last table. I can't wait for this day to be over. To realize that, wait a minute, why would anyone bring an authentic self that's bad to someone else? What is the point of it? Why would you do that? It takes the same amount of energy to bring your best authentic self. It's not an energy difference. What are all those cliches about how many muscles it takes to frown and how many muscles it takes to smile? And so seeing people underachieve, seeing people achieve and create magic in a room, seeing that balance tells you what you want to do. So what I strive to be is my best every day. Now, am I perfect? Far from it. It's not about perfection at all. It's about clarifying an objective and then going after it with your whole heart and soul. And so when I realized that people play the obstacle pretty regularly, well, I think 2008. So 2008, so I coach a lot of construction teams. So this is a typical conversation, Paul. The owner of a construction company would say, wait a minute, Michael, I just laid off 4 people today. So you expect me to go in all Michael Allosso happy tomorrow? How is that authentic? So I take my chill pills and I breathe and I ask questions. Is your authentic objective tomorrow to make the people left standing mourn the people that you just laid off? No. Is your authentic objective tomorrow to make the people left standing nervous that they're the next ones that are going to be fired? No. Or is your authentic objective tomorrow to make the people left standing do the same amount of work they've always done, if not more, for the same amount of money, if not less, so that you can get your company out of this thing and start putting food on people's tables? Yeah, that's the authentic human being that you bring to the workplace. That's you on your best day. Think theater, Paul. So we're doing a play, and today is the first rehearsal of the play. And you get your script and it says, Paul walks across the stage drunk, approaching Michael. And so you come up and you go, hey, how are you? I go, ugh, Paul, what are you doing? That's so fake. And you say, well, Michael, the script says that I'm drunk. Paul, when you're drunk, what usually is your objective? What are you usually trying to get people to think? Usually people are trying to show that they're not drunk, that they're able, I've been in pubs in the UK. You guys should know this better than us. It's like, no, you don't play drunk. Playing drunk is playing the adjective. You play the action. So what you and your best day is all about is creating a series of actions with intentionality every day that heightens your excellence. Rather than playing the obstacle, we know what the obstacle is. Let's play the action. Let's play the objective and come up with tactics that help us win that objective. And all my training when I do You and Your Best Day programs is always going to include a little bit of improv, a little bit of theater, because it's about going outside your comfort zone. Why would you want to do the same thing you've always done? Why would I want to stay a high school drama teacher my whole life? Why would I want to stay a professional director, choreographer my whole life? It's always about yes and in improv. So yes, you are a crabby, serious CEO. Okay, fine, I accept that. And what else? So yes and is the core of improv, Paul. So if I'm doing an improv with you and I say, ooh, Paul, there's a spider on your shoulder. You can't say, no, there isn't. You have to say, oh yeah, it's my friend Phil. You want to meet him? Or you have to say, get him off. That's yes and. Same about life. Okay, you're crabby and your back hurts. Yes, and. And what else? And I want to make my team better today. Yes, I'm a coach, one-on-one coach of executives. Yes, and I want to do workshops and keynotes and do creative events that make people come to life more. It's yes, and. I don't do subtraction. I only do addition.
Michael, I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation from one end to the other. I think we could probably do another 3 or 4 hours quite easily. I love running these podcasts because I kind of feel that way about a lot of my guests. We have some phenomenal personalities on. One last question for you then before we wrap things up today, which is the word on everyone's lips right now is AI, particularly ChatGPT, digital tools. And I'd imagine, coming from a theatrical background, you have some very specific, strong feelings on the subject and how it's used and trained. With the rise of AI, what do you think leaders should be doing now to make sure that their communication evolves to come in line with that AI? Like, what are the pitfalls that you'd like to see them avoid, and how can they really excel at what they're doing?
Don't forget yes and. So what I'm seeing happening is what happens in my own team. I have a whopping 4 employees. And so I give an assignment, and Wendy, she's in San Francisco. She's my steerer of the ship. She hands the thing back to me and I say, oh, you used ChatGPT for this, didn't you? And she said, how'd you know? ChatGPT is wonderful and I want you to continue to use it. Yes, and. And when Wendy's on her A game, she takes the ChatGPT and Wendy's it up. And she adds that humanity. So even though that's a simplistic example, that's the answer to your question. Human beings, I believe, and call me naive, will never go out of style. We were always going to be needed. That's my passionate belief. And if we reject technology under some provincial thing that no one is better than a human being, well, how silly is that? I wouldn't even find my way from here to my next gig. I use technology all the time. Look what we're doing right now, the magic of speaking across the pond like this. So it's yes and. How do we embrace all the new technology and always, not sometimes, always dose it with humanity? How can you create recipes that include the technology and the humanity to give you your distinct voice? Now, in order to do that, you need to know what your core values are. You need to know what your super objective is. What are you, why are you on this earth? What is the difference you want to make? And then that's what you inject in the human being. If you have people who know how to use the technology and insert their personality as well, think about that dynamic recipe you have for success. So I'm all in. I'm not, technology is certainly one of my weakest things. And you always have to know what you're weak at so that you have other people helping you. And I do, and I embrace the technology. I embrace that I need to know more, and I use it to make me better, never deleting me. I never want to remove me from the recipe. You and Your Best Day, from me, my brand is me. And that's why it's kind of circular. And I know you did this on purpose because you're so brilliant. That initial conjecture you had about people rejecting and want to have their own brand. If you don't understand what you stand for, how do you know how to modulate technology? If you don't know who you are, then the technology is going to take you over rather than you're embracing the technology and using it to augment you. Make sense?
It's a beautiful summary. I love it. Thank you very much, Michael. It's been a genuine pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you very much for taking the time. And if folks are listening along and they'd like to learn more, maybe they'd like to hire your services or just understand your methodology a bit more, how can they best contact you or find that information out?
Yeah, go to my website, youandyourbestday.com. I'll tell you, a lot of my UK brothers and sisters link in with me. I don't know if I ever told you this. I do a different outgoing voicemail message every single day. I've been doing that for about 45 years, 2 of them, one on my cell phone, one on my home office. Yeah. So I create 730 different outgoing voicemail messages every year of my life. It's one of the ways to keep me creative. So Wendy, the heretofore mentioned Wendy, I hired her in 2020. She's, by the way, a former drama student of mine. That's how I met her. I met her when she was 13 years old. She lives in San Francisco. And she, when I hired her in 2020, she said, "You're so dumb, man. Like these messages that you've been creating, they get erased the next day. I'm going to chronicle them, put them in a library, and I want you to video them. You pick one of the two, either your cell phone or the home phone. You're going to video them as you do them, and we're sending them out to your universe." So that put more pressure on me to actually look half decent when I do it, think about what locale I'm in. And so now my UK folks are watching those videos. India's ahead of you. So when I wake up in the morning, my phone is exploding, first with my buddies in India who say, "Today's message was very good, better than yesterday." And then the UK people saying, "Oh yes, this was a little less boring than yesterday." So I get my feedback as it comes further west across the pond. And it's so much fun. And I was totally exaggerating. But the UK folks are so, actually, they're better than the Americans of telling me what's good. And that's a myth about the UK, brother, is that every time I come to the UK, "Oh, Michael, we're not effusive here. We don't call people out for excellence the way you do." Bull. When I'm in the UK, I get such beautiful, specific feedback. And to this day, my messages from my UK buddies, constituents, clients, I think is actually very powerful. And so I was totally making a joke about, "Yes, better than yesterday, but boring." No, that's more, don't get me going on Americans. So that's what I want your teams to do, is start with that. And then think about the services I offer: one-on-one coaching, which all over the world, workshops where I love going, give me any excuse to come to the UK, please. And then once a year, and someday you have to do this, big guy, for 2.5 days here on the coast of Maine, I do a retreat. And so this year it's September 11th through 13th, 2.5 days of sheer improv. And I do it on a farm up here in Maine, where there are goats and chickens, and it's exercise after exercise after exercise, getting you to go outside your comfort zone and applying that to leadership. There's a giant barn on this farm that has a stake, quite lovely farm. And the owner of the farm is also a gourmet cook who cooks for us while we're there. So it's this incredible adventure for 2.5 days that really is me at my best, where I pull out everything, that collision we talked about, all the careers, and then people take that and apply it to their life, their career, a book they're writing, the workshops they're leading. Thank you for asking me that, Paul. Super sweet of you.
Pleased that we had you on as a guest today, Michael. It's brought such a smile to my face, and it's really, I've genuinely enjoyed the conversation. Lovely to have you along. Thank you very much. And you are absolutely welcome to come back for a round 2 at some time as well. And people at home, thank you very much for watching along. I'm sure you've been both entertained and have learned something very substantial today as well. I've really enjoyed the points that Michael's made, and I hope that it makes a big difference in your own corporate life, your personal life, and if nothing else, that you've enjoyed and had fun today, which I think is important now and again as well, right? Take care, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to feature on a future show, or you've got some ideas for folks who would make a great guest, please drop us a line. Contact details are in the show notes, and I'd love to hear from you. Your host today was me, Paul Banks, founder at Javelin Content Management. Here at Javelin, we specialise in helping busy business owners just like you to repurpose video content, taking all the stress and tech problems away and turning your long form video into literally hundreds of pieces of content without breaking the bank. We describe it as getting ideas out of your head into video and out to your socials. If you want to launch your personal brand, become the vendor of choice for your audience, or maximise your sales revenue impact, we'd love to hear from you. Join us next Wednesday for the next episode, and don't forget to subscribe and give us a review. Our podcast is only possible with your continued support.